think we can all agree the VHF is not a toy. And with the advances in technology today, most radios can do more than ever. For example, this radio, I can set it to scan different channels. So I scan channel 16, 13, and 9 in weather alerts. And most radios today are equipped with DSC capability, distress selective calling. And if you're set up with your MMSI number, Maritime Mobile Service Identity number, that will help provide additional information. The DSC allows you to send a distress signal to the Coast Guard with one button touch. And if you're hooked up to the GPS, it'll even show up on the Coast Guard chart monitor. And we're going to see a little bit of that later. To find out a little bit more about today's VHF and some of the procedures, we're going to go to the Annapolis Coast Guard Station and speak with some of the personnel there about the importance of VHF communication on your boat. Well guys, as I mentioned, we're going to visit Coast Guard Station Annapolis, talk with the Coast Guard a little bit about some of the VHF procedures. So here we are, and we're going to meet Senior Chief Corbin Ross, and he's going to give us a little bit more information on the Coast Guard's point of view on the VHF. And it's not as complicated as you think it is. It's just important to use your radio when you need it effectively. So let's go meet Senior Chief and get a little more information.
Good morning everyone, my name's Corbin Ross. I'm the officer in charge of Coast Guard Station Annapolis. Welcome aboard. This morning we'd like to talk a little bit about the VHF radio that's carried on board your boat. Now some vessels, due to their length, are required to have a VHF radio, but it's recommended that everyone carry it, even if you're just operating a kayak or a canoe. The ability to call for help could quite frankly save your life, and if you don't have that option, you won't be able to use it. So we definitely recommend that everybody take advantage of that. Some of the big key points of the radio is that we have what's called a DSC option on many of the radios that are built today. If you have that option, the Coast Guard recommends that you set it up, attach it to a GPS if you have a GPS on board your boat, and put in the appropriate identification numbers into that system. This will help the Coast Guard to identify you, figure out exactly where your location is, and help you to broadcast your distress without as much effort on your part. It's an automatic system that is put into place so that you don't have to think about it when the time is necessary. Channel 16, which is our hailing and distress frequency. If by chance you need to get a hold of another boat that's out there, it's okay to use channel 16 to get a hold of them initially, but it's important that you switch your channel right away. If you are in distress, feel free to use channel 16 to hail the Coast Guard. The proper way of hailing the Coast Guard is just to call the Coast Guard out 3 times and say that you need help. If you don't remember that, feel free to just say that you need help, and the Coast Guard gets the point. We'll come to your dispatch as soon as we possibly can. Another option for the radio is to scan. We'd like to have you scan channel 16 at all times. It's not a bad idea to scan channel 13 and then at channel 22 alpha. Channel 13 is our channel that the ships in the local area use to talk back and forth. So if there's movement of the larger vessels in the Chesapeake Bay, you'll be able to hear it on channel 13 and be aware of their movement. Channel 22 alpha is a channel that the Coast Guard uses to talk to non-government agencies. So if there's anything going on in the area that the Coast Guard is working on, you can be aware of it by listening to channel 22. One of the things that you might hear come across your radio is a Securite broadcast. The Securite broadcasts start on channel 16, and then they'll be switched to channel 22 alpha. It's important that you switch and listen to channel 22 alpha so that you're aware of what is in that broadcast. It's usually going to be information regarding navigation or weather in your area. This is important for you to understand so that you can be prepared while you're out on the water. Another transmission that you may come across is a pon-pon. This is a broadcast that the Coast Guard uses to alert other boaters that someone is in distress. If you continue to listen to the pon-pon, you'll learn that there might be someone in distress that's in your vicinity, and you may be able to help out and save a life. It's important to do that and then get back to the Coast Guard and let them know that you're in that area and that you're willing and able to help out. Mayday is another transmission. This transmission will typically come from you as the boater if you are in distress. So if you're listening to your radio and you hear a Mayday broadcast on channel 16, you can be sure that someone in your area is in distress and they're about to tell you what their distress is. It's important that you listen to this information because you can then relay that back to the Coast Guard that you heard a Mayday and what your position is so that we can help that person that's in distress. It's also important that you ensure your radio works before you head out on the water. A lot of people do this by using channel 16. Channel 16 is a distress and hailing frequency and shouldn't be used for radio checks. Channels 24, 26, 27, and 28 are channels associated with a program specifically for this purpose. I would highly recommend to any boater that you use those channels or any other channel that you know that fishermen may be operating on to conduct radio checks in the area. And the final key we'd like to bring up is to ensure that you're all safe on the water. Sometimes it can be intimidating to pick up a radio mic and call the Coast Guard. I want you to know that you can call the Coast Guard at any time. You don't have to be intimidated and you don't have to worry about exactly what you say on the radio. You can simply say, "Help me." We will get the point and we'll get the assets that are needed to save you.
Well, I think that was very interesting, especially in the communication room where you could see on the screen where the one vessel that had a problem and called with the DSC, how that showed up, making it much easier for the Coast Guard to find them. But typically, the most common call that we recreational boaters are going to make is hailing a marina. For example, it would go something like this: Lighthouse Point Marina, Lighthouse Point Marina, Lighthouse Point Marina. This is 36 Cs, over. And they'll respond either with your name or they'll just say, "Vessel hailing Lighthouse Point Marina, please switch and answer 68, over." And then you're going to say, "Switching 68, over." Now after you switch over, you get back on it, and you just have to say, "Lighthouse Point Marina, this is 36 Cs, over." And they'll come back with something like 36 Cs, how may we be of assistance today? And then you carry on your conversation. At the end, Lighthouse Point Marina will say, "Lighthouse Point Marina, back to 16, out." And then you would say 36 Cs, back to 16, out. And that's really all there is to it. The next most common thing would be hailing another vessel. Now, out on the water, I know there's times I want to call somebody. I don't know their name. So how do you do that? You pick up the radio on channel 16, just as a hailing frequency, and then you switch over. I would say something like, "Sailboat departing Lighthouse Point Marina, headed north. This is 36 Cs, over." And if they have the radio on, which they should, then they can come back to you and say, "This is Resolution, please switch and answer 09. Now it's important to say that. Don't just say, "Oh yeah, this is the boat, pick a channel." Pick a channel? What is this, lottery? No, give them a channel. Spend as less time as possible on channel 16, and then carry on your conversation. Another one that is pretty common is calling a bridge tender. And again, they mostly monitor channel 13. Most of them will also monitor channel 13, and some will honor channel 9. Now, if you don't know the exact name of the bridge, it's the same thing as hailing a boat. You would just say, bridge tender on whatever river you're on. This is eastbound vessel requesting passage. And then they'll get back to you, and if you've responded on channel 16 or started on channel 16, they're going to ask you to switch over to another working channel. So that's kind of the basics of VHF. Use it sparingly for emergencies. Get off of channel 16 as soon as you can. It's not a toy, as we talked about, and simple basic procedures, and you'll have a great time on the water, and you'll be able to communicate with each other. Until next time, happy and safe boating to you, your family, and friends.